Welcome back to the Anachroschism. When we left off last time, a possessed necklace with a mind of its own had attacked Grail, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
The intent was sort of to put it on anyways, but the necklace, as suspected from the thumping around inside the chest it had been doing, seems to have taken on a mind of its own. And inside of the Countess's vault in Glen Kogo, it has now attached itself to Grail. Just for the viewer's sake, who may not have transferred parts, Isaac, Tessie, and Grail inside the vault. Vault is closed.
Mm-hmm.
Lena, Karash, the Countess and her sister, all outside. So inside the vault is where we're starting here. And Isaac, you watch as after Grail opens the chest, the necklace just flies atop her head and then sets itself down around her neck. And as this happens, there is this momentary spark from the brooch. Looks dark. It's already an obsidian brooch to begin with, but you can see it sort of crackle just momentarily, not ongoing. But as it makes this connection, there's this brief flicker of what looks like dark energy from the center of the brooch where it's cracked. Tessian, as you're watching this, you also notice that the brooch of the necklace around your neck is glowing faintly. A deep but still recognizable green. To Isaac, at least, you were unconscious the last time the necklace glowed like this, but Isaac, you do recognize it. It's the same kind of faint glow that it had to it when the decision was made to put that necklace on Isaac on Tessian to begin with.
So I'm standing between you two, and I'm looking, and I'm saying, so far so good. How do you two feel?
I guess Tessian sort of like holds the necklace. He's definitely kind of got his eyes on Grail because he's way more concerned about what's going to happen to her. He's like, fine.
Grail, you heard none of this.
Okay. Can I see them?
No.
Grail, how are you feeling?
And you
Grail?
look because she seems to be there, and you kind of take this opportunity to look over her as like you're expecting a response, and you notice that she's there. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong with her, but as you kind of ask her this question, and you both kind of look at her inquisitively to see what her reaction is to this happening, you start to notice after a few seconds pause that there's no response.
Oh, dear.
There's just this kind of 1,000-yard stare.
Is this what happened to me?
It's exactly. We may have a situation here.
Grail. One
Yes?
second, you're in this vault. You're sort of already hesitant about this necklace, as it were, and as it flies up and then over your neck, you're kind of looking up at it briefly before it settles, and then nothing for what feels like 10, maybe 15 seconds. The first thing that comes to you is not a sight in this nothingness, but a sound. A lot of sound. Thousands of sounds. The thing that cuts through is panicked screams. The noise that hits your ear is that of seemingly hundreds or thousands of individuals who are in a huge rush. And as your vision sort of comes to you, you see yourself. Okay, you don't see yourself. Your point of view is in the streets of Lycidian, which you recognize now, having been there the once, even just for a couple of days, darting in and out. But there's enough around you that's recognizable that this is Lycidian. And the screaming is from hordes of citizens running past you. They're all, for the most part, taller. There's a handful of shorter folks, be they dwarfs or gnomes or kids, also passing you by. But for the most part, your vision is waist level on most people. And as you look around, you're noticing you don't have control of this scene. Wherever you're looking seems to be, you're almost like a passenger to this vehicle wherever it's looking. But there is no distortion. There's no... Your vision is clear. There's nothing in the peripheral clouding it. There is no wiggliness to it, which is to say it's different than Tessian's. There's a loud streaking noise overhead that cuts through even all the screaming of the individuals that are all cascading past you. And you look up and you see a red dragon, a blue dragon, one that appears to have a copper exterior, a couple other ones that streak past too quickly for you to even identify which color they are. But your first assumption is that all these people are worried about the dragons. They're not. Whatever the source of the citizens' fear is, the dragons seem to be attacking something outside the city walls, using their breath weapons from above. Can't make out what that is because of the walls on the northern side of the city, but the dragons all appear to be occupied just outside to the north. The town guard, you can see, are the other people that are kind of standing in place ahead of you, directing everybody else to keep heading to the south, sending them to the boats on the ports on the southern side. You occasionally hear some people in the midst of all this referring to something that they are fleeing from called the Destroyer. Town guard keep just shoveling them along, waving them by, telling them to get to the boats as quickly as possible. In the midst of all this, a slender, almost pristine-looking hand, which is to say very well kept, reaches down, and your point of view rises to your immediate vicinity up to see a woman who looks somewhat like your grandmother, but different. Different enough that you're pretty sure it's not her. There's also an all too familiar necklace draped around her neck. The height disparity between the two of you is considerable, and the woman looks down at you and says, "Come, little one, we have to get you safe." And you watch as a smaller hand, from your own perspective now, reaches up and clasps the woman's. And she begins to drag you through the streets, heading north, just fighting against a swarm of people, a sea of resistance that's almost unilaterally moving opposite you as you head into them. A couple of minutes pass as you duck and weave and bob your way through the individuals as best you can. Occasionally one of them runs into you, brushes against your shoulder accidentally. They seem apologetic, but they keep moving. She eventually pulls you into a building on the side. And having a moment to catch your breath, your vision looks up into the woman's eyes. She is terrified, upset looking. But there's also this glint of determination. She looks down at you and she says, "You have to promise me to make a new life for yourself. I'm so sorry. It's the only way to keep you safe. When you get there, find me. But whatever you do, don't tell anyone where you're from." You watch as tears start to streak down her cheeks on both sides. And she removes the necklace from herself and places it on you. You look down at your chest and can see the brooch dangling at the edge of the necklace as it settles around your neck. And as you look up, she seems to be finishing casting a spell of some kind. And before you have a chance to say anything, your vision shimmers violently. For a moment, you lose sight of what you're looking at completely. There's just a swirl of colors, and you're not even entirely sure what's happening. About 15 seconds passes of this as it gets worse and worse before it finally starts to subside. And when it does and your vision finally clears, you're in the same room as before. There are some familiar landmarks as they were, a similar carpet on the floor, some ornamental jars in the corner that are the same as what you had seen before. But the woman is nowhere to be found. This figure that you're embodying looks around the room, seemingly finding nothing. Eventually steps out into the street, and it's the same stretch of the city of Lycidian that you were in, well, you, in the vision, were in before you were pulled into this room, only there's no more bustle. There are people going about their business. There are still hundreds of folks walking the streets, but they're no longer terrified. They're no longer running from something. Eventually, your vision returns to black. When it returns, you see a vast, flat swath of land. As far as the eye can see, the horizon in perfect clarity with nothing limiting your vision. Around you are piles, if not mounds or mountains, of desiccated corpses in every direction. Thin wisps of smoke lightly trail up into the air. You find yourself walking through these mounds as best you can, trying not to step on anything, cutting a path best you can through the area where the bodies are either non-existent or at least as few as possible. Eventually, your attention is taken by something that breaks the silence, and it is an eerie quiet, an unsettling calm. But a voice cries out, a man's voice, and you turn to look in his direction. He's on his hands and knees next to one of the bodies, almost beside himself in anguish. You look at him and he screams out in a wail, "How? How could this happen?" He looks up at the sky, as do you as you follow his vision. Pristine blue, cloudless, marred only by this faint smoke that sullies the immediate area. You walk over to him, kneel down beside him, put a hand on his shoulder. You can feel his body quivering with sobs. You just hold him for a second, consoling him best you can. An elvish woman approaches eventually, looks over at you. She's in traveler's garb, somebody who seems like an adventurer of sorts. She says, "I've never seen anything like this. This devastation. It's almost as though the life has been sucked out of their bodies." You just shake your head in response slowly. She says, "We have to search for survivors. If anyone could make it through this, they would have to be in terrible shape, but maybe someone lived through this somehow." You slowly nod in her direction. Squeeze the man's shoulder as you rise back to your feet, and the scene fades again. Another 10-15 seconds of nothingness passes. But for the first time, as your vision returns, you know where you are. It's a familiar room. It's in your parents' house. And you watch as this form that you're currently inhabiting stares down at what you can make out as a baby girl in swaddling clothes and blankets in a crib. The form reaches out, rocks the crib back and forth slowly. Candlelight in the room gently flickers. You can hear the crickets quietly chirping, and you look out at the window briefly while you continue to rock this crib and see the night sky. A scene that you're familiar with. It looks like the outside of Sheepstop Hollow. This hand continues to just idly rock the girl back and forth before you hear a sigh come from your own form. And she reaches up to her shoulder, seemingly, pulls something over her head, and places a, again, all too familiar necklace on top of this child's form. Looking down at her, you rise from the chair you were sitting in, slowly turn and walk out into the hallway, leading to a living room that you spent much of your own youth in, Grail. The sight fades, and it takes another good 30 or 35 seconds. You start to wonder, is there anything else? Is there something more? Am I stuck here? What has happened? Before you realize it's not that there's nothing to see, but that it is too dark to make anything out. Your eyes sort of adjust for the fact that it appears that you're in some sort of cave with virtually no light whatsoever. You can see just the faintest hint of shadows, but they don't form anything. They're too indistinguishable to make anything of them. And eventually you hear a voice, a familiar one, your grandmother's. She sounds winded, as though she had been exerting herself recently or had just done a long run. She says, Grail, if you have this necklace, things may be more wrong than I thought. I was never supposed to be here. My mother, your great-grandmother, sent me here to escape a terrible disaster. At first I thought she had sent me through time somehow to the past where things were different. I wasn't sure, but as I've gotten older, I don't think that's the case. I eventually found my mother here. She was overjoyed. I guess I had been missing for 2 years. She thought I was dead. She thought all hope was lost. Was the other me dead? Did I kill her when I was sent here? I've spent so many nights thinking about it, but I have no answers. Maybe there was no other me. I honestly don't know. If I didn't know better myself, I would think that nothing had happened, that this was always the life I had led. But I have memories of things that did not happen here. Eventually, I started building a life for myself. Everything felt familiar, the places, the people, but different. It was always hard to understand why. On her deathbed, your great-grandmother gave me her necklace, a family heirloom. She said it was for protection. I didn't have the heart to tell her I already had one. But I wonder if that's where things started to go wrong. I started to feel off, almost out of place, like I didn't belong. This pit in my stomach, it felt like guilt. It felt like I was somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. I had made such a nice life for myself and had given birth to and raised your mother, and she was now starting a life of her own with you. I told her it was just an illness. That's why I wasn't feeling right, but I think it was more than that. My own necklace, the one my mother from the other side had given me, had started to feel sickly if I ever wore it. And eventually I could see the very center of it cracking ever so slightly, as though it were losing its grip, its ability to stay in this form. I've given you my necklace, the one from here, to keep you safe. My other one, I don't know what's happened to it, but it's wrong. It gives me visions at night. It plagues me. I intend to bury it somewhere to try and keep its effects away, but I don't know even what that will do, and I have to hope that this magic I sense in you is real. It didn't pass on to your mother, but perhaps you can make sense of this if it ever comes to it. Truth be told, I hope you never find this cursed thing, but if you do, your own necklace should keep you safe. That's all I ever wanted for you, was for you to be safe, for you to grow up healthy and happy, to have a regular life, just as my own daughter, your mother, did. I hope all of you have regular lives. Whatever happened to me, it kept me alive, but I don't know at what cost. Please forgive me for what I've done. Even I don't understand the full scope of it. Another moment passes, and you return back into this darkness. Tessian and Isaac, you are maybe 5 seconds later from where you were. You start to kind of wave a hand in her face, touch her to see what's happening, what's going on. Looking at the necklace, it still is not pulsing with any additional energy. It's the same cracked brooch you've seen before. And all of a sudden, Grail, with a familiar, at least to you guys, gasp that the same as the sort of thing that Tessian had as he returned from whatever visions he was having. You gasp for air, just and look around and see Isaac and Tessian both looking at you, concerned.
Grail?
I touch her. She's still solid.
I don't say anything. I kind of look like a deer in the headlights kind of a thing, just kind of almost like shocked or scared, and I'm not really sure if I'm in this time in the moment, and so I just don't really say anything, but I do look down at Isaac's hand on my shoulder, and then I kind of look up at him, almost confused.
Did you have a vision, Grail?
And I blink a couple times and say, you could say that. Yeah. And so Chris, how do I feel? Like after, and it sounds like it was like with almost like a blink of an eye that all this kind of hit me. Am I tired? Am I sick?
You are tired, yes, but you don't feel like you have been when you were getting those jolts, or certainly not the initial experience with this otherworldly, almost death-like feel.
Okay.
You did take 5 points of necrotic damage from the initial spark, but as far as how you're feeling now, disoriented, because it does feel like you went through maybe 20 to 30 minutes of experiences, but it doesn't seem like any time has passed, judging from their responses.
Yeah.
The vault is still closed, assuming that the people outside stuck to the minute. You can even tell from that you're within somewhere in that time frame. It doesn't. You're out of sorts only because of this difficulty reconciling what you felt versus what seems to have happened. But you feel like yourself.
Okay.
You feel you're. And at no point, just for clarity, for Tessie and Isaac, at no point did her form ever do the same thing it did for Tessie, where it was, seemingly shimmering or fading or whatever that was. So overall, tired, especially just given the last 16 to 18 hours overall, and then this most recent thing. But you feel like yourself.
Okay. Even despite kind of putting all those pieces together, I'm still gonna kind of look towards the door and just say, How long have I been standing here?
Tessie kind of looks to Isaac, but it's just like 5-10 seconds.
I think I need some water, and I think I need to sit down. There's there are some things that I need to discuss with everyone.
Well, sit down for sure. Are we good to leave the vault? Did you figure out a way to help Tessian?
Testian reaches out and just places a hand on her shoulder to sort of see if there's a spark still.
And there is not.
Okay. And I kind of like watch him do it, and I look down and like notice the necklace. It's still on me, right? It's just...
It is still on you. It
Okay.
is not. In fact, you have no idea that it did spark that momentarily bit that
Yeah.
it did. It looks like it did before you put it on. Inactive looking. Tessian's is still faintly glowing green.
It didn't do anything.
And Tessian kind of has a moment where he's like, should I try to take mine off?
Now's the time to test, I think. We know we can put it back on you.
So he kind of takes it off and gives it a second as soon as he does.
As it clears the top of your head, Isaac and Grail, because you're here now, you can see Brooch is still faintly glowing green. I guess it'd be on the side, in front of his head as he pulls it over top. His form shimmers ever so slightly, just a little bit, and subsides even before you have a chance to kind of react to it. The necklace continues to glow as he's removed it from his head, but it seems like the violent shimmering has stopped.
Okay. Well, good. That's one problem down.
You also hear on the exterior of the metal vault door, a voice kind of calls out. Sounds like Lorene. Everyone all right in there?
Yeah, just a moment. And then I want to say, Grail, do you think it's a good time for you to take that one off too?
And I kind of look down at it again, and I touch it a little bit, and I just say, I believe I've gotten what I need out of it. I think it's worth a shot.
And I get ready for
Yeah.
whatever I need to. I'm bracing myself.
Tessian's got his necklace, and he's sort of in this like, am I gonna put it on me, or am I gonna put it on her, or like, he's ready.
Yeah.
He's ready.
And I'm gonna try and take it off.
You go to pull off the necklace, and for just a moment it feels impossibly heavy, like it won't budge. But after kind of lifting it for a second, it does come up. And as you pull it over the top of your head, you can feel in your hand, as the hand with the brooch in it, as you're pulling it off. And it starts to shake in your hand.
I am going to put it back on.
What?
Well, I think
Tessian's like, Grail?
I don't. So I'm still holding it, but I'm kind of confused. I'm gonna try and I have it kind of halfway. I'm gonna say it's resisting. I don't. What should I?
Yeah, it feels as though it's pulling back to you.
But
Like
it,
your
but
hand,
it's,
you watch as Grail's hand kind of pulls closer to her head as she fights against it.
but it's off.
It's off.
I'm gonna try to slam the box
Yeah.
around it.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm not fighting with Isaac to do this, but it is. I'm kind of unsure how to deal with it. So
So you move the box up next to her. time it so that she releases it and close the box around it as quick as possible, you are able
Sure.
to do so.
Okay.
As soon as she basically, you kind of like catch it. So she releases it from her hand long enough that you can close the box around it without pinching her hand. And inside you hear,
God, this thing is persistent.
I think it needs to go back in the bag.
And I'm way ahead of you, and I have the bag open, and I'm like, whoop! Good riddance with that.
Is the one I have still glowing?
yes.
Tessian kind of just holds his hand out to Grail, and he's like, perhaps you should take it?
I guess this is the final experiment.
I reckon it is. I take it from him and kind of hesitantly, like, move to put it around my neck.
As you do so, you feel hesitant because this whole thing has been sort of unsettling, and as you place it around your neck again, you feel nothing. If anything, there's this momentary pause where you relish in feeling nothing and not having the necklace resist against you or try and place itself in a certain way. And you feel as the brooch settles against your torso, you feel this momentary pulse of warmth. The green color dissipates from the necklace, and you heal for 8 points.
And your HP is permanently increased.
You permanently have 3,000 HP.
Yeah.
New tank.
You feel that energy pulse through you, and then the color from the necklace fades and it returns to its usual form as you've known it for as long as you can remember.
And at this, I kind of offer a sigh of relief as I kind of look between Tessian and Isaac, and I say, I think everything's all right.
Oh, there was lots of scenarios I thought might happen. This was not one of them, and I'm relieved that I was wrong.
And Tessian nods, and he just kind of takes a second to look at himself, and then just gives Grail a pat on the shoulder, and is like, well, I guess we have things to discuss then, yes?
I believe so. Everything that you saw, but fragmented, I saw as well, and more. And I'm not sure how to unpack it all, but I do want to discuss it with y'all.
We'll get there. Grail, I put my hand on her shoulder. You were very brave for doing this, and thanks to you, Tessian can count himself among the living for a bit longer, at least.
I'm so sorry, Tessian. I didn't know what we were dealing with, to be honest. I still don't know entirely, though I think there are some answers that I can give you.
It's like, well, I look forward to hearing the story. Perhaps we should get someplace more comfortable. And he kind of looks to Isaac in the door.
And then I grab Tessian's shoulder while still on Grail's shoulders. It's a little triangle, and I say, I agree, good friend. How does it feel to be not worried about your existence? You're back.
And he's like, well, I suppose I'm out of the clear for now, but we don't know exactly what happened the first time. Well, I guess we'll see.
We did it. We did it. Good job, everyone.
I kind of offer a genuine smile and say, and maybe we learned a lesson about putting on other people's jewelry, Tessian.
And Tessian's like, nonsense. That's how we got here, isn't it?
I guess you're right.
We did it. We did it. And I'm just opening the door.
Okay.
Yes.
You guys swing the vault door open. Lena, Karash, you see the three of them all seemingly fine inside the vault. Looking out in the other room, the three of you that were in there also see Lorene, who has what seems to be a butter knife in her hand, Lunaire clutching her holy symbol around her neck. They both kind of look in your direction as you open the vault, and Lorene says, You're okay."
Surprise, to be sure. But yes.
Yep.
Yeah, she put us through quite the scare. She was blanked out for about 10 seconds or so.
And I nod and I say, and it felt like much, much longer with what I saw.
Speaking of what you saw, Grail, I don't want to push you, but we probably all need to hear it.
I agree. I guess to make a long story short, what Tessian saw was what I saw, but I saw greater detail. It from what I can tell, it was my grandmother. It was my grandmother. The things that she saw. And then I won't go into all the detail exactly, but I will explain everything, including the confusing Lycidian piece in which it doesn't quite line up historically, and the dragons, and the colors of the dragons, and the destroyer, and the plane, and I will discuss the cave, though. Yeah, I'm gonna be totally honest and mention all of it.
Okay. You see Lorene kind of go from... She puts down the butter knife, seeing that you guys are safe, as soon as she opens the door, but you see her kind of sit down afterwards.
Tessian actually tries to get Grail to sit down too to tell the story.
Yeah, and I will, for sure, because I still feel, even despite getting healed from my necklace, I'm still feeling a little disoriented, very disoriented. Mm-hmm. And I think sitting will help me with telling the story, so...
Whereas Lorene was kind of pacing as you told it, but after you're finished, she kind of sits down as almost, like, hoo boy kind of
mm-hmm.
way. She looks up at Lunaire, her sister. She says, "Have you ever heard of anything like this? You know so much more about magic than I do, but this seems different." Then her sister sort of nods. She says, "I may know magic better than you, but this is something completely beyond my scope. Visions and time, places that don't match up. I can't say I've heard of anything like this before."
I kind of look between the two of them, and I say, "The spell that was cast on my gran by her mom. Have you heard of anything like it?"
You can see Lunaire kind of thinking for a moment and kind of racking her brain. She says, "Not really. There are some possibilities. Most of them require an extremely high-level caster, someone who is well-versed in the arts of magic. Even as a decent practitioner myself, I'd like to think that I have a variety of magics at my disposal, but those are far beyond my grasp. Regardless of what happened to your grandmother, it was something big, but the abilities to do that are for a select few, if any."
How does teleportation work in the world? If we know, unless the people don't know.
How does it work in what way?
Like, is it like Nightcrawler, where when he teleports, it's like he's actually moving through another dimension? Or is it like instantaneous, like wormhole thing? Like, do you perceive it when you're teleporting? You feel the whoosh. But does it just look like you're gone one moment and appearing somewhere else the next moment?
I'm going to just check to see if any of these spell descriptions tell me anything that's going to answer that question specifically before I answer it myself.
Well, and so while you're doing that,
Yeah.
I would just say that is the piece that I picked up on too, Grail, is this all comes down to that spell. She just cast it, and it appears whoever you were, slipped through a dimension entirely.
One that mirrors the one that they were living in previously.
Although with something called a destroyer, which doesn't sound particularly pleasant.
No, it didn't. And judging by the sounds and the crying of people running the opposite direction, it certainly was not pleasant.